When we first get those birds, they literally start out as, like, pun intended, shells, like these shells of a chicken. And as we put our love and care and dedication into rehabilitating them, we get to see their personalities develop. We see all their firsts. So for example, they never got to breathe fresh air. They'd never felt sun, got to scratch in the grass or the dirt, stretch. All of those things are a first for them. And we get to be there and experience that with them and watch them. Like, I like to call it figure out how to chicken. Like, they learn how to chicken. And that is just, for me, that's one of the most rewarding things about what we do.
Welcome to the Better Life for Animals podcast, where we amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. Through powerful stories and expert insights, we shine a light on the efforts to rescue, protect, and advocate for animals. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. Every follower helps us reach more people and support animal sanctuaries. Enjoy the conversation.
Erica Camp is the founder and hen enthusiast behind Second Hen'd, an all-volunteer nonprofit in St. Louis that finds loving forever homes for ex-commercial egg-laying hens, often called spent hens. Raised on a family farm in Colombia, Erica fell in love with chickens as a child after saving a bird she named Chiquita. That experience reshaped how she saw so-called livestock and planted the seeds for her life's work. Today, Second Hen'd partners with local egg producers and community organizations to rehome hens by the hundreds into backyard flocks, while Erica teaches chicken care classes and champions chickens as companions who deserve a second chance. She also created Birds of a Feather, a free virtual support group for chicken caregivers, offering a compassionate space to navigate the emotional realities of loving and losing these often overlooked animals. Erica, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me.
You said that your love for chickens started with Chiquita. So why don't we start there? When you were growing up on a family farm in Colombia, can you share that story and how that ultimately led to Second Hen'd?
Yes. Okay, so I want to apologize in advance if it feels a little too graphic for anybody. I'm not going to go graphic with it. But so I was raised on a farm. The purpose of the chickens on the farm were for meat and eggs. And me being an only child, I didn't have siblings to play with. And of course, I was tasked with chores because it was a whole family thing. Everyone had a job. And my job was mostly the chickens. So I would get sidetracked playing with them, bonding with them. I gave them names. I cuddled them. I mean, they were my friends. And so for me, the traumatizing part was regularly one of their times would come and I would beg for their life and be told no. And then a couple hours later, hey, here, you have to eat your friend. And so thankfully that didn't happen with Chiquita. She was the one that I was actually allowed to keep as my own. But all the others, I had to see that repeated process. And so instead of carry on doing what my family did, I think you can either go two ways. You can either carry on or you can go opposite. And that's what I did. And so I knew that I wanted to work. I've always known I wanted to work with animals in some way. But it's just very kind of interesting how all these different things led me back to chickens because I knew I wanted them when I was an adult. The timing was just never right until when everything kind of lined up for me to be able to start Second Hen'd.
It's so traumatizing. And I'm really glad that you didn't shut that down, as so many of us do in order to survive, right?
Yeah. I could have become hardened and been like, oh, well, this is just life. This is how it goes. But I never could.
So you set this up in St. Louis. Yes. Tell us about your first setup and where we are as we speak.
So, I mean, we're still we operate small because especially in a state like Missouri, I'm sure you can imagine it's a little more difficult. And it's not like people are exactly throwing money at us to save chickens. A lot of the focus seems to be more on cats and dogs, which are more commonly accepted as pets. Um, so if we would have, waited until we had everything we needed, we would not have saved any chickens yet. So we really had to kind of start small. I guess you could call it more micro, where we did batches of about 40 at a time. And then we just kind of steadily grew until now we do batches of anywhere from about 150 to 200 at a time. And we don't have any permanent location. That's always been a goal of ours that we scream from the mountaintops. Like, I don't know how many times I've said it, but if we had a permanent location, we could take more hens at a time. We could keep them for longer, and we would have more flexibility with a lot of things. But because of us not having a permanent location, what we have to do is do those smaller batches, which still sounds like a lot to some people. 150 to 200 birds is quite a bit. So we do those smaller batches, and we have a very strict time frame. We get them better, we place them in homes. And we only take the number of birds that we have homes lined up for. Since we don't have that permanent location, we can't keep any longer term while we work to find homes for them. And that's the thing is if we had that space, we've had these conversations with the egg producer, hey, we have room for 2,000 birds and we have people who will take them. Can we have them? And they didn't even bat an eye. They were like, well, of course. So the holdup is us not having access to those resources. And I've always said from the very beginning, our goal is to grow this nationwide. But it doesn't seem like that would be a smart thing to do unless we had everything working in a proper way here first. And so that's really been the big holdup, is being able to expand and grow because we don't have what we need to model off of here. But once that were able to happen, we potentially have connections in quite a few other states. So if we could get up and running the way that we envision here and have like a really solid working model, we could open other locations throughout the US.
Okay, so let's talk about what a spent hen is.
Sure.
And I also want to talk about, let's then talk about a perfect little template that you're trying to reproduce. What is a spent hen? How do you procure your partnerships with the egg producers? And how do you create the perfect environment for their second chance?
So we actually there's only one egg producer that we've been working with this entire time. And that's been almost 10 years now. We started and built that solid relationship with them. And so we work with the same egg producer. And a spent hen, and that's actually their terminology. That's kind of something that we've found works, is using their terms. But if you notice, everywhere we use the word, it's in quotes. And that's because we want people to ask questions. Well, what do you mean by spent? Because the idea when people hear spent is, oh, these must be these old birds that aren't laying eggs anymore. So yeah, get rid of them. And the egg producers, they don't hide the fact that they get rid of these birds. What they say is, well, their egg production has declined or they've stopped laying, so we're getting rid of them. And that choice of wording leads people to, again, think, oh, so they're old, they don't lay eggs anymore. So yeah, we understand why they're getting rid of them. When the truth is, these birds are really only 1 to 2 years old when they're quote unquote retired. We also put that in quotes because that's the nicer way of saying it, but they're sent off to slaughter. And here in the US, it's not like overseas where they have birds that are more dual purpose. So when they're done with eggs, then they use them for meat. Here, those birds, now there are smaller operations, I would say, that probably try and do things a little differently. But for the most part, they're sent off to slaughter, they're killed, and then just disposed of. They're not used for dog food or cat food or anything else like that. And so to us, that seems like, well, such a waste, right? Like, of lives.
Yes.
Because in the US alone, not even including other countries, and not to include meat birds, over 300 million egg-laying hens every year are killed as a result of this practice. And so we said we see a better way forward. Let's find people who want to give these birds happy lives and let them be chickens for the first time ever, because our focus is caged birds, the ones that come from the cages. They usually have about the size of an 8x10 piece of paper. That's how much space they have to move around. And so we said we don't agree with this terminology, especially since most of us who work for Second Hen or do the job, we've had chickens our whole lives. So we know they can live well past 1 to 2 years. I have girls right now that are 8, 9, 10 years old and doing well. So that just seemed so wasteful. And again, the purpose of putting spent in quotes and using their terminology is it's multi-purpose. We want people to ask questions. Well, if they're not really spent, why do you use that word? That's us using their terminology, because overseas they use different terms, and that's us trying to, I guess, kind of figure things out and forge our own path here in the U.S. But we want people asking questions, and we're using their terminology so that it can also show that we're willing to work with them on some things, if that makes sense, by using their terms.
Mm-hmm. So you procure these birds, and then I'm imagining that they might be traumatized, that they might have health issues.
Yes. So, okay. So I will say right now with like 100% certainty that chickens are very capable of showing signs of PTSD. Mm-hmm. So when we get them, I mean, they've been transported at multiple points in their life before us. Usually their last transport is going to be off to be killed. But they've, a lot of times they start out in like a grow out facility. So they're hatched in one place, then they're transported to a grow out facility. Then when they've started laying and they're old enough, then they're transported to the egg farm. And then when it comes time for them to be retired, then they're transported to wherever it is that's going to take care of that. But so when we get them, because of them being in the conditions that they are, I don't know if you've seen any of the photos that we have, but their combs, the thing on top of their head, is very, very big and enlarged. It's really fat, and it's very pale. So normally a healthy chicken would have a nice big bright red comb on top of their head. Now white leghorns, which are the breed that we get, they usually have bigger combs anyway. So it is a little more extreme and shocking for people to see, and we warn them about that. However, so the big comb, there's a couple different reasons for it. So it's lack of proper nutrition, because they haven't been getting probably the best feed. It's what's cheapest. Then there's the fact that they're crammed together in the cages, so it's insanely hot in these facilities. That even though the fans are running, since chickens can't sweat, that's how they get rid of heat from their body, is their combs and wattles will swell and get bigger. So it's a mix of that plus the overactive hormones from them laying as much as they have been. So once we can get them in an environment where they're eating better, they're not overheated, and they're not expected to lay egg after egg after egg after egg, we will see that their combs shrink, they redden, and they look more like normal white leghorns. Now, the way that you see their feathers in the beginning, we say it's kind of different levels. Like I said, these are supposed to be white leghorns, but most of these birds, when we get them, are not white. They vary in kind of shades of cream to brown, and that's because in the facilities, in the cages, they have them stacked on top of one another, and usually they have wire flooring. So you can usually tell like who was on the bottom and who was more towards the top because of the shade of brown that they come in. And their feathers, they do look very rough, And some of that is the result of, again, nutrition and them being bored and picking at each other. And that's why they cut the beaks, is so that they don't kill each other. But the reason that they're getting rid of them is because they hit their first molt. So chickens have to molt every single year. And that means drop all of their feathers and grow new ones. And the process usually takes about 2 to 3 months. So during that period, they stop laying eggs so the body can devote all of its resources to generating new feathers. And it's kind of like women with their menstrual cycles. When you have a whole bunch of them together, they sync up. And that's why you see that range between 1 and 2 years, because it really just depends on when those first birds start their molt. All the rest of them start to kind of sync up. And then that tells them, okay, we're done. We don't want to wait for you to molt. We're going to get rid of you and then bring in a younger batch of girls. And so that's some background I probably should have mentioned earlier in describing what a spent hen was. I apologize. But back to it. So once we're able to come in and get them out of those situations, all those feathers that look very rough for numerous reasons that I just mentioned, they will finish losing those, and they will grow in beautiful, silky, white feathers. And even in just like 2 to 3 weeks time, a month later, they look like totally different birds. And I think one of the most rewarding things for myself, and I've also heard from our adopters, is when we first get those birds, they literally start out as, like, pun intended, shells, like these shells of a chicken. And as we put our love and care and dedication into rehabilitating them, we get to see their personalities develop. We see all their firsts. So, for example, they never got to breathe fresh air. They'd never felt sun, got to scratch in the grass or the dirt, stretch. All of those things are a first for them. And we get to be there and experience that with them and watch them. Like, I like to call it figure out how to chicken. Like, they learn how to chicken. And that is just, for me, that's one of the most rewarding things about what we do. And that is, I would say, part of that whole process of rehabilitating them. So they start out looking really rough. And I know it can be scary for a lot of people. Some people don't feel like they can handle it, or they're worried they're going to hurt the chicken or something. But I promise they're much stronger than people give them credit for. And most, like I said, in a month's time, they'll look totally different. And that's all because of you.
So you have a network of individuals ready to, they say, I can accept so many chickens. And I'm assuming there's somebody that's done a site visit that says, okay, this is what it takes to properly house a chicken. What does that situation look like?
We have a quarantine space where we keep them, and that has to be taken care of, or we have to get it ready and then take care of it after each batch of birds. And that's why we have kind of a push to get them in and out as quick as possible, is because it's very temporary. Since we don't have a permanent location. But yeah, no, I mean, we work with what we've got. We don't have a big barn or anything like that. We just have to make do with what we've got, because if we would have waited, we never would have been able to start. But yes, we have a network of people that say they're ready, they can take this many birds, and when it's go time, we start making arrangements. We let them know, hey, birds are coming. And I mean, that's kind of how it works. It's pretty solid. And we've got adopters in multiple states too. I think the farthest to date is upstate New York. So, I mean, there are people out there who really want to do this and are passionate about it. So they put in the effort to travel to get birds. And anytime we're able, we also do whatever we can to try and work with them as well. But, like, I remember back when I was that person looking for a place that did this and I couldn't find anything, like, I was willing to travel. But I couldn't find anything, so I ended up starting this. And if I would have found something, though, I would have just done that, because it would have been so much easier.
If you are an avid podcast listener and are always looking for another podcast to add to your playlist, then here is a suggestion. Lantern Voices is a podcast by Lantern Publishing and Media. Every month, a different author or authors published by Lantern is interviewed. They talk about animal rights, veganism, social justice, and other topics that you may be interested in. For those of you who don't know, I have 3 books published by Lantern Publishing, a trilogy of children's books, Gabriel, Cluck, and Pickle. I was one of their first guests invited by Lantern Voices, and if you'd like to hear me in conversation with another Lantern author, Anouk Frolic, the episode is number 3 of season 1. We talked about children's books, how to bring up veganism with children, and more. Lantern's Voices is available in all main podcast streaming platforms. So can a chicken thrive in all climates? I live in the desert.
No, yes, no. So I mean, okay, there's a whole chicken community out there that will fight you on anything I say. But so for me, we have some pretty crazy summers here in Missouri. Like it's humid and it's hot. So what I do is, I mean, I have fans, I have misters going, I have little pools with ice in them for them to, dunk in. I use sand in my run, which the mister keeps nice and wet, so that helps cool them off. They're in a shady area. I do my best with what I have. And then again, in the winter, even though they're really fluffy and they seem like they can handle the cold really well, I make sure things are insulated. There are no drafts. They have places that they can huddle together. And then I don't use a heat lamp because of the dangers, but I use more, now it's still a risk, but it's like a heating panel. And so if it tips over, it auto shuts off. It doesn't go past a certain temperature, and I just kind of leave it in on the side so that they can get close to it if they want to, if they feel like they need that heat, and if not, they can move away from it. Now, one of the main reasons that I do this, and I am pretty set on doing this, is because, like I mentioned earlier, most of my girls are much older. So they're at a point where they need that extra support. They're not as good with body regulation and body temperature regulation and stuff like that. So I provide those things for them. So like I said, there might be some debates with people, but that's my take on it. That's what I do.
You're listening to Better Life for Animals podcast. Our mission is to amplify the voices of animal advocates, sanctuaries, and changemakers working toward a kinder, more compassionate world. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. First of all, go ahead and subscribe to this channel wherever you're watching or listening. And then get involved by visiting betterlifeforanimals.com. That's betterlifeforanimals.com. Be sure to check out our blog, learn more about incredible sanctuaries, and explore our book section, where 100% of net proceeds from book sales are donated to sanctuaries. Every action you take helps to make a difference. And remember, subscribe to this channel. And now, back to the show.
Well, if you are just joining us, we are speaking with Erica Camp of Second Hen'd Partners. And this is Cheryl Moss of Better Life for Animals. So Erica, I love what you're doing. I appreciate that these beings need a home. I've personally seen what happens to birds that have been traumatized. And I want everyone who thinks they could take on a chicken to consider reaching out. That's why I'm kind of asking, so what are the minimums? What must a chicken have in order to thrive?
And I feel like it is also important to note, and I don't want to start a whole debate here, but I think it's important to support organizations like ours that are doing things the way that we are, instead of going and trying to find some of these birds yourself, like on a Craigslist ad. And I promise I have good reason for saying so. So we've found that some smaller egg producers they realize they can make some last minute cash by advertising these birds on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace. And there are people who have big hearts that see and know about what these girls have been through, and they're very moved to go buy some of these birds. I totally understand where you're coming from. I feel that pain with you. I really, really do, because every time we go get birds, we have to leave some behind, and it sucks and it hurts. But the reality is, if you go and you buy birds from those people, you're only putting money back into the system that you don't agree with. So organizations like Second Hen'd, we do not pay for the birds. The egg producer donates them to us. Now, there is a cost, an adoption fee, when we release birds to people, but that is simply to cover the care, the veterinary care, and everything that happens while we have them in quarantine and transport. That is it. So there's also a rising trend of people, quote unquote, flipping birds. So they're the ones that will search out those Craigslist ads. They will go get birds, and then they will take them to their home. So they'll get them really cheap. They'll turn around and they'll try and sell them for like $20, $25 and make a profit off of them. But again, the fact that they bought those birds from an egg producer means that that money is still going back into the system. And anytime you support and put that money back into the egg industry, you're also supporting hatcheries, because hatcheries are the ones that oftentimes produce the birds for these operations. And something that I really try and emphasize for people is for each female chick, because we're talking about the girls right now, the egg layers, but also please remember that for each female chick, there is a male chick that is born. And on day one, since he's not considered profitable because he doesn't lay eggs, he gets thrown in the shredder alive. So anytime you put money into that industry, that's what you support. And I know it hurts to see these ads and be like, oh, well, I'm just going to scroll past, because you know you can do something. But it's just, as hard as it is, you can still adopt, but consider doing it through an organization that's not putting money back into that industry.
I hear you, Erica. And, I think it's important that we understand that you're trying to help, these animals find a home. And so whatever you're doing is, your heart is in the right place.
Yeah.
My questions have a lot to do with having anybody, even, and just thinking of myself as an example. Let's pretend I were going to consider this. Would I have what it takes to give that chicken a good home? So those were my questions.
Yeah.
But, because I don't know, as an example, and you may, do the typical veterinarians that are taking care of cats and dogs, do they have the experience in suburban settings to tend to a chicken?
No, they don't. And a lot of times they won't even consider seeing your bird. So we get a lot of, so I tell people, if you find a vet that will see chickens, even if they don't know a lot about them, but if they're willing to learn and they keep an open mind and they're even willing to learn from you, that's better than nothing. Because a lot of veterinarians, they either don't have enough experience, and maybe they're nervous, so they think, I can't do this because I know nothing about birds. We've encountered some that the way they broke it down was, well, why, even though they could help, and they would if you really wanted them to, the way they approached it was, well, why would you spend this money on trying to get your chicken better when you could take that money and instead go buy a whole bunch more new chicks and start over? It's like, because you're not getting what I'm saying. I want this chicken to live because this chicken is my companion and my friend. I don't want to start over. I want them to live. I want them to have a quality, amazing life, and trying to explain that to them, they just weren't grasping it. And I don't know why, but we didn't use that veterinarian again. I will say that. But we have been very fortunate to over the years, finally encounter veterinarians who were willing to learn and help us out and support us in what we do. And we've even had veterinarians that adopted from us because they fell in love with chickens, and then more specifically, these kind of chickens. So
tell us about what makes a chicken such a special companion. People don't know.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, first of all, in case people didn't know, when they're happy and they feel safe and content, they purr just like a cat. And it's the cutest little thing. They just like snuggle in. I will say some chickens, now they're individuals. I want to put that right up front. So try not to judge them based on breed or sex. They are individuals. So just like any other animal, even if you do all the quote unquote right things, you're still going to have some that maybe aren't as nice as the others. Or even if you do everything wrong and you treat the animals terribly, you're going to still have some that end up being the sweetest ever, because they're individuals with their own personalities. And so, like for me, I can take out my hammock in the backyard, I lay down, and all my chickens are fighting to jump up on me and just snuggle with me. And I know plenty of other people, if the time that you put into your chickens is what you will get back. So if you only get chickens because you're like, oh, well, like, because there are people who just get them for eggs, right? They say, well, I'm not buying my eggs from the store. I'm keeping my own chickens and I'm giving them a good life. So it's better, right? And they have these chickens and they have a coop for them and they feed them and they give them water, but they don't ever really spend any time with them. And then they don't understand why their chickens aren't snuggly like other people's. And you start asking questions, well, like, how much time do you spend with them? Like, do they have names? I don't name my chickens. I never spend time with them. Well, that's why they're not cuddly. But if you put in the work, I find them very similar to like cats that come from a hoarding situation, and I'm talking about spent hens specifically for this part. Or dogs that have like a puppy mill background. So at first they're timid and they're shy, but the work that you put in is what you will get back out. And they have the potential to be super loving animals. And I truly believe animals from those situations, they understand what you've done for them. They recognize that you saved their life and now you've given them everything. And so for spent hens, I would like people to keep that in mind in considering giving them a chance. But also chickens in general, it still really is what you put in is what you'll get out of it. So if you don't spend any time with them, they're just going to run wild in the backyard. But if you spend time with them, and they're very food motivated, so they love treats. If you are a common bringer of treats or a regular bringer of treats, they will warm up to you super fast. And they will get so excited when you come out. And I think that's kind of the in. That's the in with chickens. But once you're in, they absolutely adore their people. Yeah, they really do. And I'd say some are more like cats and some are more like dogs. Like, so for me, I only have a few chickens that are more standoffish, even though I've done absolutely everything the same. And it's like, okay, I guess that's just your personality. I have some that are more like dogs in the sense of they just want to follow you around everywhere and be with you at your side at all times. That's their motivation. That's their goal. And then I have others that are more like cats, where it's not that they don't want to be loved and they don't want to snuggle, but when they want it. So you have to wait until they're like, okay, I think I'm ready for some scratches. And then they approach you. And then when they say it's okay, all right, we're good. So it's a spectrum, and they're gonna find them all along, but the potential is there for them to be just like your beloved cat or dog.
One of the things that you also have going on, which I think is so enriching for this community, is you've created a Birds of a Feather community, a support group. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I'm still in the process of trying to get it going, because there is definitely a need there. As I mentioned earlier, kind of how some veterinarians see chickens, a lot of us who love our chickens also encounter that mindset with our families and our friends. So we'll be struggling trying to get one of our chickens better, or they were injured or something happened. Some people don't have access to veterinary care. Some people are told, we won't see your chickens, or why spend this money? And ultimately, no matter what you do, sometimes the chicken still passes. And there are a few of us who we find, okay, let's open up, let's let our guard down just a little bit to talk about how much that loss hurt with family or friends. And one of the most crushing feelings is when you finally open up about that loss, and then you're met with, but it's just a chicken, get another one. Or why are you sad? It's just a chicken. And it's like, but this was my chicken. This was my pet. This was my friend. Like, and so I saw there's a huge chicken community. Now, there are different types of chicken people, but the type of chicken people that we are wanting to join us are the ones like me who really, really love our pets. Our chickens are our pets. They're our babies. And whenever we go through these things, we experience these losses, we're devastated. And we don't have anyone to talk to, or no one that feels safe. And so that's what I wanted to create, because there are other, animal pet loss groups out there, but that's, again, geared more towards cats and dogs. And it feels like if you were to try and join one of those spaces, you might be met with a few, but it's a chicken, why are you here? And so I really wanted to create something specifically for us enthusiasts, us very serious chicken people who love our birds, to be able to connect, to talk about our losses, even if, let's say maybe someone has a sick bird at the moment and they don't know what to do because they don't have a veterinarian that will see it. We can kind of talk through some of that stuff as well and use our combined knowledge and experiences of chicken health to try and help each other out. So I see it as a place where we can get very sciencey. We can talk about grief. You can say as much or as little as you want. You don't have to show your face. We do ask that people use their real name, but you don't have to give us a full name. You don't have to tell us where you are. There's that option to be more, anonymous if you want. But yeah, we invite all spiritual beliefs, or if you're not spiritual, whatever. You can talk, you can just listen. It's totally up to you. We just want you to know that there's a space that's safe where you're welcome. And we've all been through something similar, and we just want to support you.
Erica, the work you're doing is so important. I can't thank you enough for considering these animals that deserve a decent life. Yeah. And here you are working your heart out, doing everything you can to try and find them a second chance. Before we have to go, please tell us what we can do to support you and how we can find you to offer that support.
Sure. So the easiest thing that we always tell people that is free is you can support us on social media. So we are on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. A couple of those we're still trying to grow. We're not maybe as active as we should be, but it is very difficult. The majority of us have full-time jobs and families and stuff like that yes. We have to kind of juggle along with the chickens. But social media, following us, sharing our stuff, engaging with our content, it's free, it's easy, and it really does help us tremendously. We have a website. The easiest way to probably find us is going to be on our link tree. That will take you to absolutely everything that we have. But donations, if you know people who are able to donate, we could really, really, really use the help, because because we put everything into each batch of birds, we haven't really been able to save up for that permanent space. But if we had that, we could do so much more. So even if you can't donate, if you know someone who can, or someone who would like to get involved by helping us with grant writing or figuring out ways to help us raise money, please, we welcome you. If you're interested in volunteer opportunities, we have some stuff out there if you're local. We have things that you can do to help us out, and we would love to connect with more people who want to nerd out about chickens with us. Like that's who we're looking for, the crazy chicken people, but good crazy. I should say good crazy chicken people. But yeah, no, I mean, and if you're not sure or you have an idea about something, send us a message. You can reach us through our website. We have a contact form. Send us a message. Tell us your ideas. Tell us what you're thinking. Do you think we should be somewhere or someone should hear what we have to say? We're open to it all.
Excellent. Erica, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. This has been Erica Camp of Second Hen'd Chickens. And if you have enjoyed today's conversation, as I know I have, then please like and subscribe so that we can create a better life for animals.
Thank you for joining us on the Better Life for Animals podcast. Together, we can create a world where all beings are treated with dignity, respect, and care. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you're listening. It helps us reach more people and spread awareness about the incredible work happening in animal sanctuaries. You can also share this episode with friends and fellow advocates to keep the conversation going. Until next time, keep speaking up, taking action, and making a difference for the animals.